Okay, great. We have joining us right now, and I'm sure he's very busy, but we have the Washington Post's Paul Kane. Paul, thank you so much. I know you're busy following
Oh,
the votes that are happening today.
oh
Um,
yeah. Sorry.
no,
Just
no,
like
it's been crazy today.
bouncing around the floor. I'm just in a little cubby hole out off the house floor. We should be somewhat soundproof, so I'm
Oh,
here.
no
Let's get
problem.
going.
All right, so just bring us up to speed. So what is happening right now?
They are going through nominating speeches
Okay,
for a sixth ballot.
that's
They are
crazy.
going to do. It'll be the third one today, just as they did three yesterday. Um, They are each time the Republicans pick a different person to be the nominator for Kevin McCarthy. This time they have Kat Kammack, who is a sort of fiery southerner from Florida, northern Florida, and she's sort of an ally of these outlier conservatives who hate McCarthy.
Okay.
And so, like, they're each time they have somebody new speak to McCarthy and his what they perceive as his strengths, with the hope that it'll it'll convince somebody to switch and change their mind. So far, the only people who have changed their minds are people who have broken against McCarthy. So they'll get started with the alphabetical roll call here in a couple more minutes. There'll be another nominating speech by Democrats for Jeffries, and there will be somebody presumably nominating Byron Donalds again of
Right.
Florida. I wasn't able to see who it was that would give that speech, but then they'll get to the roll call of the alphabet, and it will probably end up exactly the same.
Now
I was
you wrote, one real quick, Kim, you wrote this article that Kevin McCarthy wasn't the one 7 years ago, and he wasn't yesterday. It's not looking like things are changing. Can you just, from your perspective, tell me, it's kind of a blunt question, what's wrong with Kevin McCarthy, not just, as a politician for some Americans, but as a Republican colleague within the GOP?
Um, it's it comes down to this, and the House of Representatives is a lot like high school, and so I'll use a metaphor that I think most people will understand. There's that person in high school who wants to be friends with everyone and is always trying to be friends. And he wants to be friends with the jocks and the cheerleaders and the smart kids and the kids who aren't really all that smart. And he like and it's really nice in ninth grade. You're like, gosh,
Right.
you know, that kid who's not really popular, he's nice to him. Um, but by 11th grade, you sort of realize this guy just wants everyone to like him. It's
Yeah.
not about it's not about others and helping others. He just likes being liked. And by 12th grade, you kind of can't wait till you're graduated and you don't have to see him anymore.
Right.
That's really his who he is as a person. And when you're talking about congressional leaders, the most important qualities is that they have to be really respected, number
Mm.
one, and feared by some. And Kevin McCarthy really doesn't generate a whole lot of respect, and he generates no fear at all. And he's just liked. People like him, but they don't love him. And it's
And they're
left
not
a
going to
group.
follow him.
Yeah, and it's left this core group of about 20 who really, really, really just dislike him. And they just decided, over time, they just realized, I don't want to do anything with this guy.
Yeah.
And there's nothing they can do to break those 20 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some pretty deceitful people among this group of 20. These are not, a lot of them are just openly deceitful. They'll tell you something and they basically will almost admit that they're lying as they tell
Right.
you. These are not honest brokers who are preventing him from getting this gavel. A lot of them supported Trump in the effort to overthrow the election. So these aren't great people, but that also makes them really hard to
To
flip
negotiate with.
to
Yeah.
negotiate with. Number one, they're constantly moving goalposts, um, and 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 they just don't necessarily want to come to a deal.
Yeah. Kim, did you have a question?
I did. You were talking about the sixth round of voting now,
Yep.
about to get underway. And I was reading an article on CNN. Representative Spartz said she abstained from voting because she says there needs to be more deliberation. So I wanted to ask you, why do they push on with a sixth round of voting? Can't they just take a beat, go back, talk this out until they, and then not vote again until they can come to some type of consensus?
Yes and no. They were they probably, I think, will adjourn after this vote. Um, I don't think anything's going to change. If there's any change, I think it might be another vote or two against McCarthy. Um, but that's probably not likely.
Hmm.
I think they just don't quite know the way out of the situation. If they adjourn again for the day and say come back tomorrow, the chances of McCarthy winning get lesser and lesser. His chances really begin to fade, and people really will begin to start talking about alternatives.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like there should be a meeting of the minds talking bring all of them together. But the reality is they had already been talking so much. McCarthy had been meeting with these people, and they're at a place where it's so toxic that them meeting and talking wouldn't do any good.
Won't
Like
accomplish anything.
McCarthy's already talked out with these folks, so he needs his emissaries, his friends who are sort of friends with him, to go talk to these people, and that's what's really been happening. Anytime there's a break,
Yeah.
all the members scatter apart and they go into these little balls. It looks like a high school lunchroom. Different crowds are talking, and people move about, and that's where you're hoping that something will break and they'll get this.
It's not likely, though. I mean, I just keep thinking about how former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she would have never gone through something like this. She would have never been, I mean, even before, I mean, the last time that she was nominated for House Speaker, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I mean, the progressives like AOC did not want her. And she made some sort of promises. I won't be seeking another term after this, and got them in line before it went down there because she needed to. And she's known for that. McCarthy's
Yeah,
no Nancy Pelosi.
yeah. I spoke with Pelosi yesterday. Out of respect, we still refer to people who are former speakers as speaker. But I joked with her. I said, "Should I still consider you the speaker?" And she basically laughed. But I asked her about this process, and she basically made that point. Like you don't keep having votes if you don't know if you're gonna win,
Yeah.
because the more you vote, the more you lock in the no. It
Mhm.
becomes easier to vote no,
Right.
or in this case, to vote against McCarthy. Um, it's really hard for members of Congress to change their vote. I know that the general public is like, oh, they're all just corrupt and sleazy. They'll do whatever you want or whatever. They do not like changing their votes. There are still people that will try to defend their Iraq war vote 20 years after it was sort of proven to be a bad vote. The weapons weren't there. And they still try to get all kind of, well, no, I meant this and that and all the
Mm.
rest. And so the idea that these folks are just going to flip is, unless they get something real in return. And what they're asking for are things like committee chairmanships and bumping other people off of committees. It's
Oh.
some tough stuff that most of the rest of their Republican conference won't go for.
Right. Well, I know that you're busy, but I do want to get your take on Byron Donalds, Jim Jordan. I mean, are we seeing an alternative emerge? Are these just cards that are being played? I mean, how are you seeing this play out with the other names? Jim Jordan wasn't even voted for today. It was Byron Donalds. How do you make sense of that?
Oh, these are just cards that are being played. They
Okay.
are these hardline conservatives are really just picking people that they know that get some level of respect from the far right corners of the conference. They don't actually suspect that Byron Donalds, who was only supposed to be just starting his second term. They don't
Right.
think he's actually going to be speaker or should be speaker. I think you're going to look at people like Steve Scalise, who's the number 2 Republican. There's other figures out there who will emerge, but it's still not clear whether this gang of 20, now 21, will support anyone.
Yeah. I mean, Trump telling him to vote for Kevin McCarthy didn't even sway any of them. So I don't know what will.
Lauren Boebert got up and gave a speech, and she said specifically that, like, call off all your campaign dogs. Don't bother. Tell Trump to stop calling us. It's not changing our minds.
Wow, it's going to be very interesting to watch. So they're doing the tally for the next vote, the 6th vote.
Yep.
It could go all day though, right?
It's just a time waster. Nothing's going to change. What's the point?
Right. I mean,
I know. I hear you.